welcome to the Photo Flunky Show, episode 134. We got a fun topic today. We're going to be talking about how to use color in your photography. Hi, my name is William Beam.
Hi, my name is Lee Beam.
And welcome to the Photo Flunky Show. We help photographers become better visual storytellers so they can take better photos to share, sell, and remember. Show notes are going to be available at williambeam.com/episode 134. We got a couple things that we thought that we would talk about with color photography, and we just wanted to make sure that you understood how to find out certain information about color. For example, which colors work together. Something you may not be thinking about is color changing the story that you want to tell with your photography. And also, this is something that I bring up because I wonder if I haven't run across this a few times, and even in my own work, are you using black and white just because you don't understand color? It's possible.
Without knowing it.
Without knowing it. I mean, one of the things I learned, going to those contrast photography classes was, sometimes you get the lights from the stage shining on somebody that have a different color, and those colors just don't work. And they said, okay, here's what you do. Convert to black and white.
Yeah, maybe, but also it's a trendy thing.
It's a trendy thing, and it's a valid form of art. I mean, it's a monochromatic form, and that's part of working with colors and understanding it. But we kind of wanted to go over some of these things, so maybe you have a few more choices when you're working with color that you didn't consider before. At least that's my hope. So one of the first things I want to bring up is that color demands attention, and it could be at the cost of your subject. You know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah, demands attention. That's probably why I love it.
All right, Lee is the artsy girl in the house.
Do you know what? It's not that I make an effort to use color. I don't consciously think about it, but I'm just, my personality, I guess, and my tastes and the way I express myself naturally draws me to color, and I use it in everything I do. And that's not just in photography. But I think when you're telling a story, when you're trying to get your message across, if it's something that's real to you and something you understand, the colors that you use or the way that you use color in your life is going to translate into your photography and expressing yourself. And I think if it's true to what you do and how you see things, it's going to come across well if you know how to use it. If you understand why. That's really my thing. Understanding why the color is important to you, why you're using the color in this photograph. And
we're going to talk about that in a little bit, as far as the color harmonies, the mood of your photo and so forth. But when I say color demands attention, there are times when I will convert something to a monochromatic, black and white photo simply because the color is getting in the way of the shot.
But that absence of color demands attention as well to.
And I think in those times I'm looking at tones and how the photo and the colors, not so much the colors, but how they're changing grade from dark to light or back and forth. And one of the examples, I've got a post that I've talked about this before. It's called The Dominance of Color, and I'll link that in the show notes. And I've got a picture of my dog, Milo, who is basically a white Labrador retriever. I mean, white lab is really just a very, very pale yellow. But I looked at that photo after I took it, and I thought, you could see little subtle bits of yellow showing up. He had a little nick on his eyebrow that was kind of red in just a spot. And I thought, all those things are really taking away from, I don't want people to look at those imperfections. I don't see Milo that way. And that's when I converted it to black and white. And I thought, that's what Milo looks like to me.
Yeah.
So there are times that color can get in the way of your subject. And there are other times color may be your subject itself. So when I went to, Havana, that's a very colorful city. You want to capture that color because it shows you something about the people who live there and the way they've chosen, to change their surroundings. And there's, other cities, whether it's here in the United States, in South America or Europe, the color means something. And it's like going to a spice market. You kind of want to look at all those different colors.
And food.
Yeah, and food. So color is a wonderful thing. It can enhance your subject, or it can be the subject, or it could get in the way. And that's why I just want to say that sometimes color demands attention at the cost of your subject. And that's something to think about. Are you shooting for the color, or are you shooting something and the color is just not quite what it should be?
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Thank you. I thought of it all by myself.
You did? I didn't help with that.
I'm not saying that I'm the first one who ever thought of it, but that's I did think of it by myself. Also, color sets the mood of your photograph, and that's a wonderful tool to use.
Yeah, absolutely. mood it can be very complex, but it comes down to something very basic. You've got warm and cool and anything in between.
And we're actually going to be talking about those kind of with active and passive colors. And well, let's go ahead and talk about it right now. Your reds are more active colors. I mean, red, orange, yellow, something along in those veins. Your blues are a bit more sedate. Those cool colors kind of slow you down.
That's true.
I don't know what to make of the green colors and the purple colors, but I guess the purple's kind of in the blue tones. Greens are just kind of off in their own little world.
Actually, you get different kinds of purple. You get purples that lean towards, you get warm purples and you get cool purples.
Yeah.
So,
but in general, we're kind of splitting the difference here, but the reds, being an active color, and that kind of inspires your passions. It inspires excitement. And you see those red or warm colors, and it kind of if you want to see an exciting brand, they're probably using those colors.
They're active. It's vibrant. It's loud. It's in your face.
But yet you wake up on a cool morning and you're looking out the window at snow. You're not thinking of red. You're thinking of blue or cold colors, and those are a bit more passive. You're not really moving that quickly in those colors.
But you're freezing. You want a red coffee mug with steam.
Or an orange one with a Tigger on it.
Yes. I use that in summer too, by the way.
Yes, you do. Lee has a plethora of mugs with Tigger on it.
I like Tigger.
One of the things we talked about was kind of my example with Milo, and color can detract from contrast and tone. And its information is really what it is all about. Color is information. It tells you something. And if I don't want you to pay attention to that, I want you to pay attention to something else, I'll remove it.
Yep, that's true.
And what is there another saying that I always think of Jay Maisel when I hear this, but I don't know that he's the first one that said it. But color is the enemy of shape, or shape is the enemy of color, something along those lines. And it depends on what you're really doing at. If you're looking at the shape or the form of something, the color kind of gets in the way, I think.
That's true. Really, I guess you have to decide what medium you're using to let your subject speak to the viewer.
But honestly, I love working with color, and so do you.
Yeah.
What is it about when you're looking at something? How are you thinking about the colors that you want to choose?
Do you know, I take for me, it's based on one of two things. It's either mood or it's the colors that are already there.
So do you like to work with the colors that are already there, or do you want to establish your own mood and manipulate things?
That depends which is the dominant factor when I'm taking the photograph. Sometimes I'm taking a photograph because of a certain mood I'm in. In that case, I'm actually almost trying to manipulate the color or the setting to work with the mood that I'm in. Other times I look at the color that I've got there and I work with it, and I might kind of work with varying shades of a similar color, or I may actually go with stark contrasts and conflicts. And it really, that's when I'm doing a mood-based photo.
Are you more likely to want to have some kind of contrast, whether it be color contrast or light and dark contrast, or do you want to go a different way and just kind of, are you looking for opposites in contrast, or do you like to have something that's maybe analogous or monochromatic when you're working with color?
Do you know, I think unless I'm in a very bold mood where I'm trying to put a strong message across with something, I do tend to go with colors that go together and maybe different tones of the same type of color. So I might be going with warms or cools. So I'll give you an obvious example that makes sense. Perhaps I'm working with fall colors. I love fall. The funny thing is that I don't care for oranges and yellows and those shades, but I do love fall, and I love working with fall colors because they're visually pleasing to me and they allow me to bring some soft neutrals and creams into them. I like that feel. I guess, for example, I'll look at what I'm using, what my subject is. So, for example, if I'm shooting food photography and I've got something like tomatoes.
You've got a lot of set decoration back pieces that you use. So depending on if you're shooting food, like you said, with tomatoes, how do you want to present that? And which kind of colors are you going to back it up with? Or does it depend upon what else is going with it?
It does depend what else is going with it. But for example, if I only had tomatoes, and I've done this before, and the tomatoes were the subject of the photo, I had green fabrics and materials and things that were in the background. And then I had some neutral things like some wood to kind of go with it. But I wanted those red tomatoes to show up against the background. So I chose it wasn't quite a lime green, but it was a very bright green trending on the yellow side of green as a stark contrast to it. So that was to highlight the subjects. I chose the green because although the green is very loud, what it did was it made the red and the tomatoes pop out to the front.
And sometimes these colors work because you see them in nature. So, for example, if you're going to pick tomatoes, I almost said potatoes because I like potatoes. I'm not a big fan of tomatoes, but if you're going to be out picking tomatoes, they're growing on a vine. They've got green around them. You see that in nature, you associate those colors automatically. The neutral ones you're talking about, like the basket, those kind of work with almost anything. We've got, like this little wicker basket. It's not wicker, I guess. Doesn't matter what the basket's made out of. It's made out of like a light kind of wood, but that's neutral. It can go with almost anything. If you had blue tomatoes, it would go with that just as well as it did the red yes. ones.
So sometimes you want something that isn't dominant, that's kind of subtle and neutral, and you want to use that now. Something that's wood is a warm neutral. You can get something that's stone, that's kind of a blue-gray stone, and that's going to be a cool neutral.
I think we kind of ought to define some of the terms that we're throwing around here, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And when we're working with color, primarily, we're thinking about looking at a color wheel. And if you don't have one, Adobe has one. You can go to color.adobe.com and it'll show you a nice color wheel. And you'll see some of these groupings that we're talking about. So for example, triads, those are colors that are evenly spaced in thirds on the wheel. And you know this by heart, whether you think about it or not. If you go to almost any preschool or kindergarten, you're going to see red, yellow, and blue colors.
Yes.
And because kids automatically engage with that for some reason, but those are triads that work, and everybody's seen that. You can't go someplace with preschoolers or kindergartners without finding those colors.
That's true. I never really thought about that. Even the school bus.
Yeah. So complementary colors. Those are colors that are opposites on the color wheel. You see this in movie posters all the time with the teal and cyan colors.
Yeah.
And the orange colors on the opposite side.
Yeah.
So if you see that teal orange or cyan orange kind of thing, and that works simply because skin tone works that way for a lot of people. And it just really makes a person stand out against the background. Go look at Batman, the Dark Knight poster. You'll see an egregious example of that teal and orange sort of complementary colors. Analogous colors are colors that are near each other. So we're not talking about different shades and tints. We'll get to that next with monochromatic. But analogous colors would be kind of like, yellow, orange, and red. Those are close to each other. And they don't have to be exact, this is straight up red or orange or yellow. There are, many gradations and variations, between each other on the color wheel. But you could do the same thing with some purple, some, blue, violet, and other shades that are kind of in the same theme as each other. Monochromatic, this is where we're talking about black and white, but you don't have to use black and white. You can pick any other color. And then you use different shades and tints. Shades would be darker versions of the same color. Tints would be lighter versions of the same color.
That's right.
And you see a lot of that in advertising. So we talked about that. And then neutral colors. Lee, you were just explaining that.
Well, neutral colors to me are colors that you can blend in so that it almost calms down the color volume of the photo. Mm-hmm. So if you're working with a lot of bold colors, or maybe you're just trying to not yell the message, and I don't know if this makes sense, but some photos are intended to be loud in their message, and others you kind of want to communicate some kind of calm and peace, or you just want to keep things stable in the message. You don't want anything to overpower anything. You've got your subject there, and this might work well if you've got a softer subject and not a bold color. So you've got your creams, your stones, and your grays, and
these make good backgrounds, and they make good separators between the various colors.
They really do. They kind of help tone down something that might get too loud and too busy.
Or they give a small example of a vibrant color a chance to pop.
Well, that's what it does. It helps you isolate your subject. And I have a lot of, for my backdrops to food photography, I have quite a lot of very neutral, and some are warm and some are cool, or, ranging from almost black kind of charcoals through to very, very pale cream materials and things. And I like to have a bit of texture when I've got something very soft like that. I think it just kind of makes it more interesting. But those are for things where I'm maybe not using a terribly bold color, so I don't want to detract from it. You know, not everything is bold. If I'm taking a picture of a fresh baked loaf of bread, I don't really want something loud in the background. It just doesn't work with bread, which is warm and it's home and it's calm. I don't want to be yelling my message across. I don't want the background to be dumbing down my subject, which is my fresh cut bread and maybe some soft, pale yellow butter.
And you don't have to be known for just one style of working with colors. For example, Lee is a really big fan of graffiti, which is loud, vibrant, kind of in your face.
I am.
But you're not going to put a loaf of bread in front of that.
I probably wouldn't know. A graffiti bread, I don't know.
That doesn't sound...
That's not my thing.
But what I'm pointing out here is that think back to your own experiences and you kind of know when something looks right. If you see a loaf of bread on a graffiti background, that doesn't look right. If you see it on a stone countertop or a wood countertop, that looks right. And those colors go together.
Now, if I bake graffiti cake, that's another story.
All right, my birthday's coming up in a few months. I do not want graffiti cake.
Oh, you're just a spoiled sport.
Oh, you can have it on your birthday.
Well, you ruined my surprise.
Well, I'm sorry. There are a number of ways that you can kind of control the color that are going to be within your photographs. Lee mentioned probably one of the simplest ways, may not be simple to do, but it's simple in concept, is your set decoration. You're choosing what you put into the photo.
Yes.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be with food photography. If you're taking portraits, you know, maybe you walk over to where the wall is the color that you want, or you find some place in town, you just go out and scout and find the location that works with the model or subject you have, the wardrobe that they're wearing, and you determine what colors are going together. And that's how you start creating your photos. And then you're setting the mood, you're setting the theme for what this photo is going to be.
Yeah. And
that depends really your taste, what the subject is going to be doing. I mean, are you going to be photographing an athlete? That's probably going to be a really different environment than, you know, a family portrait.
I found that bold colors tend to want something fairly stark but simple. You know, for example, bright red or a bright blue. You want something in a bright color, but that's a place where you maybe don't want, I don't want to say any, but you don't want too much texture. Mm-hmm. But you want something very plain in the background, because something that's loud is going to jump out to the forefront, and you always want your subject to jump out of the background.
Absolutely. Another way that you can control the color that's in your photograph is, if you're into flash photography, is using gels. And it doesn't have to be on your subject. It could be on the background. You know, a lot of photographers, particularly in wedding and portrait photography, they will put a different color gel on the background and shoot it that way. So this gives them an interesting kind of color pop between the background and their subject. There are some artistic ways that you can put gels on your subject. So we were just looking at one earlier today from Lindsay Adler, who's got a course or ebook that she's putting out. And there's a lovely photo of a model, you know, with her hair flapping in the breeze. And it looked like it was cyan on one side and purple on another side. But we looked at it and we thought, that's a nice photo.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's artistic.
I want one.
Yeah. And not without having to dye your hair that way. All you got to do is take a flash photo of it.
Well, I dye my hair that way. William's not crazy about purple hair. He wouldn't have married me with my purple hair.
I'm very staid and old-fashioned.
I like old-fashioned.
You know what? But you don't even have to go with color gels. We know other photographers who will change the white balance in their camera, and you don't have to shoot everything at perfect, absolute color balance. If you're interested in doing something that's a bit more artistic and creative, change your color balance up. You could make a very cool or very warm background, and then if you're taking a portrait of somebody, then you put a gel on the flash to compensate for that color balance. So, for example, if you set your color balance very cool and everything is kind of like blue and purple tones behind, you put a CTO gel on your flash and put that at your subject, and they look perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing with complementary colors. You can have a purple background with a filter on your lens and flash green on your subject, and the subject comes out looking normal, and you got a wonderful purple sky. There's all sorts of interesting and creative things you can do with white balance and with color gels. And finally, you could just take a normal, well-balanced photo and then take it into Photoshop or even Lightroom, and you can start playing with a hue, saturation, and luminance to kind of change different colors around and maybe brush them in where you want them. There are a number of ways to get creative with color. On the opposite side, sometimes it is very critical that your color is accurate. So if you're a commercial photographer and you're shooting for Coca-Cola, the red on that Coca-Cola can or bottle better be the same color that you have with the product. And that's why I've got something that's an X-Rite color check passport. And also I use a product to calibrate my monitor. So when I'm dealing with colors for something that must be specific, they are.
Yeah, brand colors, generally, if you're shooting for a brand, you want to have that thing exact.
And my calibration is a Color Monkey, but I'm not trying to sell you that, but I'm just saying that there are various color calibration tools for your monitor, so you can make sure that the color you're seeing on screen is what you expect. And that's not important only if you're working for a commercial outfit. It's also important if you're printing. If you're going to see something on the screen and then you print it and it doesn't look like it's the same color, it's probably going to lead to disappointment.
Yeah, and usually the first thing that you would check with that is your white balance.
Yeah.
That's normally a white balance issue.
And so it's white balance on the photo, but also if your color... Well, this one's not a white balance, I think. Well, because I'm talking about if your monitor isn't calibrated to correct colors.
Oh, the monitor, yeah.
So that's why I'm talking about having the monitor calibrated, and then that way whatever you print looks like what you saw on the screen. Yeah. Because you may have seen this before. If you've taken a photo and looked at it on 2 or 3 different computers and thought, you know what, it looks a little different on each one. These things really don't display color as accurately on some monitors as they do on others. And almost all of them probably need to be calibrated in order to make sure they're getting true colors.
Yeah, see, I don't have that tool, so I cheat a different way.
Well, you're doing a different thing, though.
Yeah.
And you're not printing as much as you used to.
No, I'm not. But I mean, like, for example, if I'm doing a brand color, it's the only thing I know how to do in Photoshop because you've taught me how. I know how to select the color and get the color code out of it. So I'll go and find something of theirs, the brand, and I'll check, for example, say they've got a blue in there, and I'll go and get the color code for the blue, and then I'll go back into my photo.
And make sure it's that.
When I export it, I'll get the color code for the blue, and I actually just mess around with it that way. Once mine matches what I've seen on the screen, I figure if they're both on the same monitor and they're the same, they're going to be the same wherever they are viewed.
One last thing I wanted to bring up is the topic of color grading. And this has gotten very popular with many photographers these days. And it almost seems like everybody's looking for a quick shortcut to do this. We'll get a LUT, a lookup table is available in Photoshop and a lot of the third-party tools as well. And those can do a very interesting job of color grading. What they're really doing is mapping one color to a theme and showing your photos that way. It's almost like putting on a quick preset to get the colors. But you don't necessarily have to do that. You can go into a tool like the color.adobe.com, export a JPEG of your photo, upload it there, and it will help you select the colors that are already in the photo. And then you can kind of tweak those to suit your needs. And that's a perfectly valid form of color grading as well. And the nice thing about if you've got an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, what you save in that website of color.adobe.com can then show up as a color profile inside of Photoshop for you. So there's some really nice tricks. I'll have to see if I can't work out on putting some YouTube videos up on that.
Yes, you should do that. I like videos.
More new toys.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for listening to the Photo Flunky Show. We hope you enjoyed this, found it useful, entertaining, or somehow valuable. And if you did, we would really love it if you would subscribe to the Photo Flunky Show on iTunes. Just go to williambeam.com/iTunes. It'll take you straight there. Or if you're listening on your device right now, please go ahead, click the button to subscribe. You can also find links to subscribe at photoflunky.com, so you can subscribe on Google Play, Stitcher, and Blueberry. As I mentioned at the beginning, show notes are available at williambeam.com/episode 134. And if you've got Lightroom, it's not performing just up to speed, I've got you covered. Go to williambeam.com/LR-hacks. There you get a free ebook called Lightroom Classic Performance Hacks. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.